In 1984, Salvador was shaken by an inexplicable event. 7 Sisters of Mercy vanished without a trace from the San Vicente orphanage. For decades, this mystery remained unsolved, becoming a grim urban legend. However, in 2015, 31 years later, an ordinary male nurse stumbled upon something in the orphanage's basement. This discovery changed history forever. It revealed a horrifying truth that surpassed the worst nightmares. It was March of 1984. The hot, sweltering sun bathed the streets of Salvador in golden light. Its rays caressed the old buildings, their weathered facades and lichen-covered tiled roofs. Among these buildings, on one of the quiet streets, stood the San Vicente orphanage. It was a majestic but somewhat time-worn structure with high arches and wide windows. The orphanage welcomed elderly people, offering them peace and care. It was known for its serene atmosphere and the incredibly attentive staff to the needs of the elderly. The heart and soul of the orphanage were the 7 Sisters of Mercy. Their names sounded like a prayer. Sister Anna, the oldest and wisest. Sister Beatrice, always full of compassion. Sister Clara, quiet but insightful. Sister Dolores. Her name meant sorrow, but she brought joy. Sister Amelia, a tireless worker. Sister Fatima, with boundless faith, and Sister Gabriela, young and full of hope. These women completely dedicated their lives to serving others. They were an example of kindness, inexhaustible patience, and unwavering faith. Each of their days began with a morning prayer. Then they began their numerous duties: feeding the residents, helping them with personal hygiene, reading aloud, and listening with genuine interest to their endless stories. Their sincere laughter often echoed in the corridors, and their presence was a source of comfort for everyone in the orphanage. However, in recent months, a certain tension had been palpable in the air of San Vicente. The sisters began to notice strange changes in the condition of the elderly residents. Some of them complained of unexplained pains. Others became apathetic and indifferent to everything around them. Sister Anna, with her many years of experience, became particularly suspicious. She drew attention to the behavior of the orphanage's director, Dr. Ribeiro. He had become noticeably distant. He spent an unusually large amount of time in his office. He also often and secretly went down to the basement. Dr. Ribeiro had always been considered a respected member of society. His charity work was known to all, but his recent actions caused the sisters increasing concern. The sisters began a quiet but determined investigation. They exchanged their observations like pieces of a complex mosaic. They listened carefully to every complaint from the residents, trying to find a pattern. Soon, they came to a horrifying conclusion. It seemed the elderly were being mistreated. Perhaps they were even being harmed. Sisters Anna and Beatrice, being the most resolute, decided to act. They compiled a detailed report, carefully describing all their suspicions and evidence. They planned to take this report to the police the next morning. It was the evening of March 5th, 1984. After the usual evening prayer, the sisters wished the elderly residents good night. Then they retired to their humble cells. None of them could have imagined that this was their last night in the orphanage. The next morning, March 6th, the San Vicente orphanage was shrouded in an ominous silence. When the staff arrived, they discovered that the 7 Sisters of Mercy had vanished. Their cells were empty, their personal belongings untouched. The doors and windows of the orphanage were locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry, nothing to indicate a violent break-in. The police were immediately called. They conducted a thorough search of the building. All the staff and residents were questioned, but no one had seen anything. No one had heard anything. No one could explain this mysterious disappearance. The only explanation that the authorities could offer was that the sisters had simply left of their own accord. This was completely unthinkable for those who knew their devotion and selflessness. The disappearance of the sisters became the main news story in Salvador. People were shocked. They could not understand how 7 women known for their righteousness could simply vanish without a trace. The public demanded answers. The police continued the investigation, but it led to no results. After a few weeks, the search was officially stopped. The case was closed. The mystery of the disappearance of the 7 Sisters of Mercy remained unsolved. Their stories became part of local legends. Their absence was keenly felt. Many residents of Salvador secretly continued to hope for their return. But with each passing year, that hope dwindled. Years passed, decades replaced each other. The mystery of the disappearance of the 7 Sisters of Mercy gradually faded into the shadow of everyday life, but it was never completely forgotten. Their names occasionally surfaced in conversations as a grim reminder of the past. People whispered about what might have happened to them. Some believed that the sisters had simply run away from the hardships of their lives. Others were convinced that they had been kidnapped. The oldest residents of the city vividly remembered the shock. They remembered the deep pain that their inexplicable disappearance had caused. The San Vicente orphanage continued to function, but its reputation was hopelessly tarnished. It became known as a haunted orphanage, a place that people tried to avoid. In the shadow of this oppressive silence, a terrifying truth was hidden. Dr. Ribeiro, the director of the orphanage, was far from being just a benefactor, as the public perceived him. He was a man obsessed with power, a thirst for profit, and boundless cruelty. He used the San Vicente orphanage as a cover for his monstrous purposes. He conducted illegal and inhumane experiments on elderly residents. He gave them new, untested drugs, watching their agonizing reactions. Moreover, he was deeply involved in an extensive network of illegal organ trafficking. When the Sisters of Mercy, driven by their duty and compassion, discovered his monstrous scheme, Dr. Ribeiro realized that he could not allow them to reveal the truth. He devised a carefully planned plan for their disappearance. He lured the sisters into the basement of the orphanage using a false pretense. There, behind a carefully camouflaged false wall, he created a secret hospital ward. It was a dark, damp, and foul-smelling place. Its walls were covered in a thick layer of mold, and the air was filled with the smell of rot and despair. It was here that Dr. Ribeiro kept his patients, elderly people who had been kidnapped from other orphanages and even from the streets. He used them in his horrific experiments as well as for extracting organs which he then sold on the black market. When the sisters found themselves in this ghastly dungeon, he locked them up. He threatened them, saying that if they tried to escape or raise the alarm, he would cause irreparable harm to the elderly people in their care. Thus, he turned them into his powerless slaves, prisoners of their own compassion. The sisters were forced to care for these unfortunate patients. They were shocked by what they saw, by how mercilessly people were treated. They tried to resist, looking for ways to escape. Sister Clara and Sister Dolores, driven by despair, tried to escape and raise the alarm. But Dr. Ribeiro was ruthless. He did not allow them to leave. He severely punished them for any disobedience, for every attempt to resist. Sister Fatima and Sister Gabriela, with their unwavering faith, tried to protect the elderly from the experiments. They threw themselves at Dr. Ribeiro, shielding the patients with their bodies as if they were human shields. Their courage cost them their lives. They died from infections that developed due to the terrible conditions or from exposure to pathogens used in the experiments. Dr. Ribeiro simply left their bodies in the basement, confident that no one would ever know about it. Sisters Anna, Beatrice, and Amelia were forced to survive in these inhumane conditions. They witnessed unimaginable horrors. They endured unbearable physical and emotional suffering. Their faith was tested to the limit, but they continued to care for the elderly, trying to somehow alleviate their suffering. They clung to the faint hope that one day the truth would come out. The years spent in captivity changed them forever. They became shadows of their former selves. Their psyches were deeply damaged. They clung to the last crumbs of hope, but Dr. Ribeiro skillfully manipulated them. He convinced them that the world had forgotten about them. He said that their search had been stopped. He said that no one would ever come to their aid. He also constantly gave them tranquilizers that made them obedient and submissive. Their will gradually broke under the influence of constant fear and chemicals. The two surviving sisters, Anna and Beatrice, developed strange, obsessive behaviors. They became obsessed with caring for old, worn-out dolls that had miraculously ended up in the basement. They believed that these dolls were their real patients in need of their care. Sister Anna, as a result of prolonged exposure to strange chemicals, acquired an unusual, almost supernatural ability. She could diagnose diseases by smell. Dr. Ribeiro cynically used this ability in his experiments to more accurately determine the condition of his victims. Dr. Ribeiro's secret remained securely buried. He was confident in his complete impunity, continuing his monstrous experiments and expanding his criminal network throughout Brazil. In 2015, 31 years after the sisters' disappearance, a minor incident occurred at the San Vicente orphanage. An old water pipe burst in an unused wing of the building that had been closed to visitors for decades. Lucas, a male nurse who had relatively recently started working at the orphanage, was assigned to investigate the leak. Lucas was a conscientious and responsible person. He was always attentive to detail. He had certainly heard the old stories about the missing sisters, but he considered them to be just urban legends, nothing more. Lucas went down to the basement armed with a flashlight and tools. The air in the basement was heavy and damp. It smelled of mold, mustiness, and something else, something unpleasant and subtle that caused him slight unease. He methodically searched for the cause of the leak, inspecting old, rusty pipes. In one of the darkest corners of the basement, his gaze was drawn to a strange section of the wall. It looked too new, too smooth for such an old basement. Curiosity got the better of him. He touched the wall. It seemed empty inside, as if there was space behind it. He began to gently tap on it. The sound was muffled, different from the sound of ordinary brickwork. Lucas sensed that something was wrong here. Lucas went back upstairs, took more suitable tools. He could not shake the nagging feeling that something important was hidden behind this wall. He began to dismantle the wall. Every hammer blow, every sound of falling brick echoed in the dead silence of the basement. With each brick he removed, his heart beat faster and faster, anticipating something unknown. He did not know what he would find. He expected to see old storerooms, forgotten things, or perhaps just piles of garbage. But he was not prepared for what he discovered. Behind the destroyed wall, a narrow, dark passage opened up. It led to an even deeper part of the basement. The air here was even heavier, even more suffocating. It smelled of rot, hospital medications, and something subtly tragic. Lucas turned on the flashlight on his phone. He carefully went forward. His steps echoed in the ominous silence. The corridor led him to a large room. It was a hospital ward. It was dirty, in complete disarray, covered in a thick layer of dust and mold. He saw old, rusty cots. He saw devices that looked like medical equipment. And then he saw something else, something that made him freeze in place. His blood ran cold. On one of the cots sat an elderly woman. Her gaze was empty and absent. Next to her, on the floor, sat another woman, just as thin and emaciated. Both women were extremely exhausted. Their eyes were full of inexpressible sadness. They held old, worn-out dolls in their hands. They gently whispered something to their dolls, caring for them as if they were real children, as if these dolls were their only patients. Lucas could not believe his eyes. He realized that these were not ordinary patients of the orphanage. He realized that he had stumbled upon something terrible, something that had been hidden from the eyes of the world for decades. He felt a cold horror run down his spine, realizing that he had uncovered a secret that had been buried for so long. Lucas immediately called the police. His voice trembled. He could hardly speak, trying to explain what he had found. The police arrived quickly. They were shocked by what they saw. The officers cautiously entered the secret ward. They found two elderly women in extremely deplorable condition. Their skin was unnaturally pale, their hair was tangled, and their eyes were extinguished, reflecting deep suffering. They did not react to external stimuli. They continued to obsessively care for their dolls, as if nothing around them existed. The police immediately began a thorough investigation. They searched every corner of the basement. They found hidden compartments. In them were documents. They found records. These documents revealed the horrific truth about Dr. Ribeiro's activities. It turned out that he had not simply held the Sisters of Mercy captive. He had used the orphanage to conduct illegal, inhumane experiments on the elderly. He tested new, unlicensed drugs on them, watching their agonizing reactions. Moreover, he was a key player in an extensive organ trafficking network. This network covered not only Salvador, but all of Brazil, stretching its tentacles across the country. In the depths of the secret ward, bodies were discovered, 5 bodies. These were the remains of the Sisters of Mercy, Sister Clara, Sister Dolores, Sister Amelia, Sister Fatima, and Sister Gabriela. Their remains were poorly preserved due to the conditions of the basement, but their identities were confirmed thanks to the personal belongings and documents found. They had died in this terrible dungeon. They had perished trying to protect the innocent. They had died fighting evil. It was a terrible, heartbreaking discovery that shook even the most experienced investigators to the core. The 2 surviving women were identified as Sister Anna and Sister Beatrice. They were the very Sisters of Mercy who had disappeared in 1984. Their condition was extremely serious. They were exhausted to the limit. Their psyches were severely damaged. Doctors and psychologists immediately began working with them. They were trying to restore their sanity. Sister Anna continued to display her unusual ability. She could diagnose diseases by smell. This ability, as it turned out, was the result of prolonged exposure to the chemicals to which Dr. Ribeiro had subjected her. Dr. Ribeiro was immediately arrested. He tried to resist, shouting that it was a mistake. He denied all charges, insisting on his innocence, but the evidence was irrefutable. His records, the bodies in the basement, the horrific condition of the surviving sisters, all of this pointed to his guilt. He was taken into custody. A trial began, which attracted the attention of the entire country. His crimes were revealed to the public in all their horrifying detail. People were furious. They demanded justice. It was the most shocking and disgusting scandal in the history of Salvador. This news spread throughout Brazil like wildfire. The media could not believe the scale of this horror. It was not an isolated incident, not an isolated crime. The investigation revealed that Dr. Ribeiro was connected to other orphanages across the country. He was part of a large, well-organized criminal network. This network was engaged in illegal organ trafficking. It conducted inhumane experiments on elderly people. This discovery shook the entire healthcare system of Brazil. It sparked a wave of reforms. It led to a revision of legislation aimed at protecting the most vulnerable segments of the population. The arrest of Dr. Ribeiro and the full exposure of his horrific crimes shook Brazil to its very foundations. News of this spread like wildfire, causing a wave of outrage and shock throughout the country. The San Vicente orphanage was immediately closed. Its reputation was forever tarnished, becoming a grim reminder of the tragedy that had occurred. The government immediately launched a comprehensive investigation aimed at identifying other similar networks and criminals. During this investigation, dozens of people were arrested. These were doctors, these were nurses, these were orphanage administrators. All of them were involved in this dirty and inhumane scheme. Sister Anna and Sister Beatrice were transferred to a specialized clinic, where they received comprehensive medical and psychological care. Their recovery was incredibly slow. It was very painful. They lived in their own closed world, a world where dolls were their only patients. They gently whispered words of comfort to them. They sang them songs. It was their way of coping with unimaginable trauma. Psychologists worked with them for many months, patiently, trying to bring them back to reality. Sister Anna continued to display her unusual ability. She could diagnose diseases by smell. This ability, a strange consequence of the suffering she had endured, turned out to be incredibly useful. She began to use it to help other patients in the clinic where she was staying. She could sense their ailments. She could help doctors make a more accurate diagnosis. Her gift, acquired in such a terrible way, became a source of good. The trial of Dr. Ribeiro was long. It was intense. It was full of heartbreaking testimony from victims and their families. Dr. Ribeiro was found guilty on all counts. He received the maximum punishment possible under the law. He will spend the rest of his life in prison, rotting behind bars. His name became synonymous with evil. he became a grim warning to all. It was a warning about what happens when power and limitless greed take over humanity. Society was deeply shaken by this revelation. New laws were passed. They were aimed at strengthening the protection of the elderly. Inspections were strengthened in orphanages. More stringent rules were introduced for all medical institutions. People became more attentive to what was happening around them. They became more suspicious of any signs of misconduct. They began to demand greater transparency from authorities and institutions. This tragedy made them think about the value of human life. It made them think about the vulnerability of the elderly, who often remained defenseless. The families of the deceased Sisters of Mercy received some comfort. Their loved ones had not disappeared without a trace. Their death was not in vain. They died fighting for a just cause, for justice and the protection of the innocent. Their heroism was recognized and immortalized. A memorial was erected at the San Vicente Orphanage. It was dedicated to the memory of the 7 Sisters of Mercy, their courage and self-sacrifice. It became a place of pilgrimage where people came. They brought flowers, they prayed, they remembered their sacrifice. The years after the exposure brought their changes, but the scars remained. Sister Anna and Sister Beatrice never fully recovered from the nightmare they had experienced. They continued to live in a specialized clinic, finding solace in each other and in their own closed world. Their world narrowed. It was filled with their dolls, their imaginary patients. It was filled with their painful memories, which never let them go. Sister Anna continued to help people with her unusual gift. Her ability to diagnose diseases by smell became known. She was called the Healing Sister. She brought good into the world despite the fact that she herself was broken by the horrors of the past. Her gift became a beacon of hope for many. The story of the 7 Sisters of Mercy became a symbol. It became a symbol of the incredible resilience of the human spirit. It became a symbol of unwavering faith. It became a symbol of the fact that even in the darkest and most hopeless places there can be light. Their story reminds us of the importance of constant vigilance. It reminds us of the importance of protecting those who are most vulnerable. It reminds us that evil can hide behind the most respectable facades, hiding behind virtue. But sooner or later the truth always comes out. And then justice, albeit belatedly, will still triumph. This story will forever remain in the hearts of people as a bitter but important reminder of human cruelty and the incredible strength of the spirit.